and our top focus, according to an exclusive report filed by the Sunday Guardian, the latest round of Pakistan-Afghanistan negotiations in Turkey collapsed moments after the Pakistani delegation received a phone call from Islamabad and abruptly reversed its position. Now, according to insiders familiar with closed-door discussions, the three-day talks mediated by officials from Qatar and Turkey had been on the verge of agreement. Both sides had finalized nearly all agenda items. Afghanistan had reiterated its long-standing position that it would not allow anyone to use its soil to attack Pakistan and had offered to formalize this commitment as well. In return, Kabul sought reciprocal guarantees that Pakistan would not violate Afghan airspace, would prevent US drones from operating through its territory, and would ensure ISIS-linked groups were not allowed to use Pakistani soil to strike Afghanistan. Now, initially, the Pakistani delegation agreed to these conditions, but soon after receiving the phone call, it retracted its consent, stating that it could not prevent US drone operations or guarantee measures against ISIS elements. Now, according to an insider, it was all but settled, and then everything changed after that very call. Diplomatic sources say that the abrupt U-turn shocked the mediators, who described the Pakistani team's behavior as erratic and uncoordinated. The delegation had already drawn attention for its off-topic interventions and frequent use of harsh language. Sources also say that at one point, Turkish and Qatari representatives privately remarked to the Afghan side that Pakistan appeared to be struggling with too many difficult neighbors. Insiders stated that the Pakistani delegation had also lost its composure during exchanges. Pakistan's representatives warned that if the TTP continued attacks, Islamabad would retaliate against Afghanistan. The Afghan side countered that controlling violence inside Pakistan was the responsibility of Pakistan's own security forces and not Kabul's. By the final day, all agenda items except one had been settled. However, the phone call from Islamabad and subsequent reversal undid days of progress, leaving the session in collapse. Joining us on the broadcast is a very special guest. With us is Major General Sudhakarji. He's a senior geopolitical and strategic defense expert joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you, in your assessment, who could have made this phone call? Could it have been Asim Munir? Could it have been the ISI? Was it the United States as well, or the ISIS?
Pia, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me to your show and giving a fantastic preamble to the entire event. Very, my deep regards to the distinguished co-panelists and wishing them all the best. As far as the question goes, this is my personal take. Whenever there has been any negotiation, any talk with any stakeholder involving Pakistan as one of the stakeholders, the ISI has always played as an internal interlocutor. ISI means it is part of the deep state of Pakistan. This is my understanding. And going by the traditional practice, whenever such meetings are taking place overseas or outside the boundaries of Pakistan, I have reasons to presume and believe that somebody from ISI has given a call at the behest of the Chief of the Army Staff. And overall, if I may have to comment, there is an angle which is driven by the global imperatives. There is also an angle of regional imperative, and there is an angle of local imperative that is within Pakistan. When you talk about the global imperative, I have all justifications to believe that USA, having realized pretty late that they have left the vacuums to be filled up by Chinese domination, they are trying their best to come back and refill the spaces which they had left a couple of years back. So they are trying to, carry out some kind of a backlash, a pushback the dominance of China in Pakistan and in the surrounding countries, thereby highlighting one aspect. That aspect is the strategic rivalry between USA and China. This is one part of the first component, global imperative. Second part, which is connected to this, is at no cost can USA ever overlook or compromise its national effort against a doctrine which has been enunciated or promulgated in a document called a National Security Strategy of USA. Not 1 year, not 2 years. It has been going on for past nearly a decade that China is number one enemy of USA. That is the bipartisan kind of a decision formulated by both Democrat and Republicans alike. In fact, I should remain not open my mouth, but it's always better to state it that even the deep state is also equally involved in formulating this particular plan. Again, I don't see any reason as to why America should abandon its national objective and channelize its effort in containing, in countering, and if push comes to shove, if the requirement arises, need be, they will be getting ready for a contestation against China. So if that be the kind of objective, then perhaps USA has started restoring its status quo ante. Therefore, there is a U-turn as regards its relationship with Pakistan, mindful of the fact that there is never going to be any exit of America from Pakistan by virtue of Pakistan having its nuclear arsenal, having one of the strongest and largest missile network, also having one of the largest armed forces in the world, sixth largest,
Yes.
and also being the only country in the world which has got a political and a military connect with the number one enemy, that is China. Like China's help was taken to disintegrate USSR, you never know. In times ahead, Pakistan's help may be taken to also collapse or disintegrate China in times ahead. That time will say. So last but not the least, is that the call could have been given at the behest of USA and direction to the Chief of the Army Staff, and Chief of the Army Staff would have further delegated to ISI. Somebody notable and important from ISI would have given a call to Istanbul to the Pakistan representative to insert these two caveats, mindful of the fact that USA does not want to resolve the issue, bring in peace on a back foot. It wants to have a competitive edge and wants to enjoy the predominance of its military assertiveness in the region, so that it is not only Pakistan, it is Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran, which are the predominant countries in the world with non-state actors, as the state policy instrument, are kept under intense check and balance. Back to you.
Indeed, sir, and I want to take this discussion with you step by step. You've spoken about the US aspiration to contain China. Of course, the key clauses that the Pakistani delegation made its U-turn on is the operation of US drones on its soil and the ISIS as well. Of course, the larger elephant in the room is the Bagram Air Base, and this is not something that Donald Trump has been quiet about. He's gone on Truth Social, ranting about the Bagram Air Base and wanting to ensure that the United States presence in Afghanistan is there as well. Do you think then this is one of the key factors, one of the elements of the US's grand strategy to contain China, and therefore this call could have been made?
Excellent question. I must compliment you, because when you talk about containment of China, then the geostrategic relevance of a country comes into the front line. The geostrategic importance of Afghanistan highlights that Afghanistan as a country is at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asian Republic, and the West Asia. And although mindful of the fact this is a country which is also popularly and traditionally called as the graveyard of empire. No superpower ever has invaded Afghanistan and come out unpunished and undefeated. America is no exception. They have had their share of mortal remains at the body bags flying back to the country before they withdrew in 2021. But having said that, if the national objective, if the larger objective, USA as a superpower, for the sake of retaining and sustaining its supremacy and its authority as a global power, because mindful of the fact that the Thucydide trap is also in play. No superpower or established power in the world will ever allow any rising power to come up near its footing. That is the old saying of Thucydide trap.
Yeah.
So America is also going to try the same thing. In order to keep China under check, effective check, we need to keep an eye on the Wakhan corridor, which is a narrow strip of land between Afghanistan and Xinjiang province of China, although it has been fenced, although the China has deployed its troops near the fencing. And it also needs to keep an eye on the unsuccessful attempt of China making the CPEC as a flagship project and a successful project. So if CPEC is not successful, if it is not giving him the dividends after having spent 42 out of $65 billion on building the infrastructure, hydropower project, thermal power stations, communication network, Gwadar has been developed purely on a year kind of a lease. Then what else is China looking for? China is not aspiring. It is very seriously started working on laying a line through the Wakhan corridor with Kabul, and from Kabul going right up to Turkmenistan, and also having connectivity right up to Chabahar and places in Iran, and beyond that to the Middle East. This is part of the BRI, which it earlier thought that from the Kunjara Pass, in between there is a shunt, that there is a diversion towards Rawalpindi and Peshawar. If this pass and the stretch of this road CPEC is not successfully implemented, duly supported by Pakistan and its people, it must have an alternate axis of CPEC so that they connect. Why Turkmenistan is coming into picture time and again? Turkmenistan is coming into picture because it has got the fourth largest reservoir of natural gas available, the best quality gas that one can ever think of. China wants to harness this particular gas and transport it by multi-medium means, but most probably it is going to be a hydraulic pipeline connecting between Turkmenistan, passing through Afghanistan. It has got a copper mine also, signed with Taliban in 2008. The agreement was signed. Copper mine is Aini, around 40 kilometers from Kabul. So it will connect that point, come up to the Badsham province through Wakhan corridor. It will bring the pipeline up to Kashgar, and Kashgar becomes a nodal point to provide a sustainable kind of energy security to the landlocked province called the Xinjiang province. This is the big plan which we are not talking of. Also, there are multiple plans like TAPI, T-A-P-I, which people in Afghanistan today, the Taliban regime, we may be thinking them to be underestimating their capability, but they have gone miles ahead in making TAPI a success. So these are later, but at the moment, answering your question, America wants to make deep inroad into Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iran, wants to keep a check, very effective surveillance on Iran from vantage points in Pakistan, wants to keep a check on China from the vantage point of Bagram airfield, that is in Afghanistan. Notwithstanding, Afghanistan, Taliban is not amenable to provide Bagram airfield to America. They've gone public in saying they will not give it to China, they will not give it to Russia, they will not give it to America, but they are openly welcoming India only. It is India which is welcome to come and develop Bagram airfield into a formidable base. I would urge the government of India to look it up with a serious note and grab the opportunity, develop Bagram airfield to our advantage, carry out modifications to the constitutional obligations, even if our troops are not allowed to have a base like this in a country like Afghanistan. We must make provisions. Going for top secret bases. We need to have a foothold in a country like Afghanistan because the sphere of influence and interest of India is no longer the same that we had in 1947. It is a global
Indeed, sir.
power.
Apologies to interject because I'm running out of time. I'll take one final, very short, half a minute comment from you. Can Pakistan really afford to escalate? We've seen Khwaja Asif threaten that if talks in Istanbul break down, open war would take place. We've seen Pakistani forces being severely affected by what's taken place in Balochistan, the TTP attacks in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They've lost a lot of jets as well in Operation Sindoor. Can they afford at this point to escalate with Afghanistan? Yes or no?
No.
All right, sir. I'd like to thank you on that note for taking our time, sharing your perspective. Breaking developments also coming in. 5 Pakistani soldiers have been killed, 15 soldiers missing post a massive ambush that has taken place by TTP militants on a Pakistani army convoy in Tira Valley in Khyber district. And a fresh statement coming in from the Afghanistan Taliban administration. They warned Pakistan, stating that from now on, any attack by Pakistan will be met with a reciprocal response. And if Afghanistan's territory is bombed, Islamabad will be targeted. That's all we have for the discussion as far as what's taking place in South Asia is concerned. Viewers, we're shifting focus to what's happening in Europe. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine has now issued a statement emphasizing that Ukraine needs European financial support to continue fighting Russian forces for another 2 or even 3 years. He's seeking stable financial assistance for Ukraine. This comes amid a European Commission proposal to gradually unlock frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's war efforts and defending its territory. President Zelenskyy has also urged the United States and Donald Trump in particular to pressurize Chinese President Xi Jinping to cut support for Russia when the 2 leaders will meet later this week. The United States, remember, earlier imposed sanctions on 2 major Russian oil companies and has been urging buyers of Moscow's energy exports, including China and India, to reduce their purchases that Washington and Kyiv accuse of funding the war. Meanwhile, Ukraine has conceded that Russian forces have gained a foothold in the eastern city of Pokrovsk, which Moscow has been trying to capture for over a year. President Zelenskyy reported that around 200 Russian troops were located at various positions in Pokrovsk. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you the need to expedite the process of releasing these frozen funds. We've discussed this before as well. This is a longer drawn process, it's not an immediate solution to what's happening on the front lines.
Well, I mean, the challenge is that Ukraine is actually really badly short of money. I mean, it's been spending everything it's got. And Europe is giving money, but it's not enough to keep a war of this intensity going. I mean, remember that a lot of spare European money is now going on producing things for their own defense. And this is something that Putin is going to keep trying, is to force countries like Germany, like UK, to spend more on themselves so that they don't have as much money to spend on Ukraine. This money, the Russian money, would actually allow Ukraine at least to float sensibly for a while. Not long. It's not long. It will get burnt up quite quickly. But at least it will also give the Europeans time European Union time to breathe and to actually to work out where they get the next tranche of money. You mentioned Zelenskyy saying about 2 to 3 years. I think 5 to 6, the way this war is going, unless people actually start attacking Russia seriously, it's just going to keep going because Russia won't give in a hurry.
Indeed, and we've also recently tracked what Zelenskyy has stated as far as the recent Trump-Xi meeting, which is going to take place in South Korea is concerned as well. That is on the anvil. It will take place later this week. He's urged Donald Trump to raise China's energy imports from Russia. We do know that there is already tension simmering between Washington and Beijing as far as the restriction on rare earth minerals is concerned. The port fees is something that the United States has also objected to. Do you think Trump would heed Zelensky's request?
No, I don't even think he'd even remember it, to be blunt. I think that you know, Trump will be soft with Xi because he usually is. And I think that, you know, that Trump is not in the business of actually stopping this war. Let's be blunt about this. He's in the business of making money. And therefore, when he goes to China, if there's the slightest chance of a deal, cash deal, or something that actually benefits Trump himself or his family, he's going to go down that line. He's not going to be thinking about the war in Ukraine at all, unless it's raised.
And we've recently seen a deal between Turkey and the United Kingdom regarding 20 Eurofighter jets. Turkey is, of course, a part of NATO, but at the same time, it also has S-400s that Russia had exported earlier itself. A lot of people are touting this deal between Turkey and the United Kingdom to strengthen the eastern flank. Considering the involvement of Russian S-400s in Turkey's defense ecosystem, do you agree or do you concur with what these experts have to say?
Well, it's very challenging. I mean, remember that originally Turkey wanted the F-35, and then America said, no, if you get the S-400 from Russia, you're going to pick up too much information, technical information about our aircraft, so we're not going to sell them to you. And I think that still pretty much holds. So Turkey is looking anywhere for other aircraft. You know, this is a case of beggars can't be choosers in European countries. They also have to sell. And I think this is a bit of a gamble, admittedly, but it also keeps Turkey linked to other NATO countries, and that's important in the long run.
And my last question to you, there's a statement that has just come out from the Kremlin. The Kremlin has stated that the Russian military has overheard foreign languages spoken repeatedly at the front line in Ukraine. Meanwhile, interestingly, we do know there is video evidence coming out from Ukraine itself of foreigners fighting on the Russian side. In fact, recently, President Putin met with North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Sun-hui as well. What do you make of the Kremlin's rhetoric?
Well, I mean, it's nonsense, and let's say it's not evidence because it's a fact in plain sight. That Russia has got North Koreans, now people from India, people from all over that they can get fighting on their side. And Ukraine has got a lot of volunteers, quite a lot from America, but also from other European countries. And you can see this because you can see their obituaries on Facebook when they die. So both sides have got foreigners. Russia is just looking for anything to try and make itself look good in this conflict. But I'm afraid it's not going to happen.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time and sharing your perspectives with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus to what's transpiring in the Middle East. We're now learning that people have gathered in West Bank to inspect the aftermath of an Israeli military raid. The operation has sparked concern among local residents as military forces carried out what officials say was a security operation targeting armed rebels. Meanwhile, Israeli officials have described the raid as part of ongoing counter-terror efforts. Locals are meanwhile demanding clarity on casualties and the justification behind this strike. The incident comes amid a broader surge of security operations in the West Bank linked to rising violence and shifting Israeli tactics following the ceasefire in Gaza. Listen in to what a resident had to say.
إنه أول ما قصفوا إحنا عرفنا إنه في إشي نزلنا ولا هو في الجيش طبعا فجر السيارة تفجير وقصفوا من الجو طبعا حسب الإعلام الإبرة حكوا إنهم قصفوا وفجرنا سيارة وحكوا إنه قتلنا 3 إحنا جينا هون لقينا 4 فرشات بالمغارة وفي مكان ل3 أشخاص دم وطبعا في بالدماغ متفجر عندهم.
Joining us on the broadcast is Sasha Machta, political commentator from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. We've seen these operations surge in recent times as far as the IDF and its crackdown against terror is concerned. We've seen an airstrike also take place recently. The IDF has emphasized that there was a terrorist attack that was being planned in the West Bank. Now, with the Gaza ceasefire deal coming into force, the hostage prisoner exchange taking place, do you think there are some elements, whether locally or foreign elements, maybe Iran, who are trying to stir up trouble in the West Bank?
So first of all, thanks for having me back on the program. It's a pleasure. And yeah, this morning Israel carried out an airstrike and took out 3 terrorists that were planning an imminent attack on Israelis in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. It's not the first time that we've seen an attack of this level thwarted in the past months, in the past years. We know that Iran has been trying to funnel in money throughout the years to support terror operations in the West Bank. Israel in 2024 alone has thwarted over 1,000 terrorist attacks inside our territory, and that's only the one that we were able to thwart, unfortunately. Terror attacks are a common occurrence in the West Bank, and that's why Israel has carried out several counter-terrorist operations in the past months and over the year, even during the ongoing war in Gaza. Not only is Iran funneling money, but Hamas has also an active presence in the West Bank. If we thought that Hamas was only present in Gaza, that's a total mistake. Hamas is not only the most popular party and most popular group in the West Bank, with over half of the local population supporting it, but it also has a strong presence and terror infrastructure. Just recently in October, the beginning of October, Israel discovered a terror cell that was planning to launch rockets near Ramallah, and the goal was to send the rockets to Tel Aviv. We later discovered in an interrogation with the terrorists. So the threat is ongoing. We know that there are regional state sponsors of terror, such as Iran, that are trying to stir up conflict in the West Bank and lead to more bloodshed. And that's why Israel has to carry out these counter-terrorist operations, and thankfully we have freedom of movement and operation in the West Bank, which is why we don't see the level of devastation and security threat as we have seen in Gaza, unfortunately.
And you've spoken about the funding that takes place, the sort of support that Hamas gets on the ground in West Bank as well. There have been calls, especially by the Trump administration as well, in the 20-point peace plan for the disarmament of Hamas. How do you think this procedure will be carried out, and what sort of an impact would it have on the terrorist plotting and planning that takes place in Gaza and the West Bank?
Yeah, so of course the most critical issue right now in Gaza is the release of the deceased hostages, of the 13 murdered hostages. That's the number one priority, because that has to be carried out and completed to finish phase 1 and move to phase 2, which is disarmament. Hamas has been drip-drabbing hostages and pretending that they do not know where the bodies of the remaining hostages are, but we know that that's not true. There are at least 9 hostages that Hamas knows where they are. And just today, Israel announced that one of the bodies that was returned yesterday actually didn't belong to one of the remaining 13 hostages and was from a hostage that was already supposed to have been returned. So Hamas is trying to test the flexibility and the fragility of this ceasefire. They're trying to push their limits and carry out the negotiations in the hope that the pressure, the international pressure that we've seen put on Hamas to agree to this deal in the first place, will end, and they'll be able to reinstore their rule and keep their control over Gaza. So the most important factor right now, the most important thing that we need to be seeing right now in Gaza is the international pressure, especially from the Arab world, from Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. That's what led to this deal, and that's what hopefully will have Hamas disarmed. But Trump said that there's no timeline for Hamas disarmament. So this is a significant sign, and it's a change in tone, because it's showing that one way or another, Hamas will have to be disarmed. Whether it is through the pressure put by the Arab world and the United States, or whether it's by military pressure, nothing is off the table. Hamas must disarm, and that's what President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are in agreement. And as you mentioned, if Hamas were to disarm in Gaza, this would be pretty significant as well for terror in the West Bank, because the main message from Hamas disarming after 2 years, where they launched the brutal massacre and a brutal war on Israel, where they took civilians and took hostages and slaughtered babies, raped women, where horrible atrocities were seen. If this ends with Hamas disarming and a new Middle East, then regional terror groups and terror groups in the West Bank, including Hamas, and the people in the West Bank will see that terror doesn't have rewards and that terror doesn't lead to anything. And hopefully that will lead to a new period of and a new shift in de-radicalization and hopefully in a peace process.
Indeed. So speaking of the peace process, you've also mentioned Turkey. We've seen a statement that has come out from the Israeli Defense Forces that they would not accept if Turkey sends troops on the ground as a part of the international coalition to monitor what is taking place. We do know that this is something that the Trump administration has mooted. He's called for the involvement of Arab countries, including Egypt, Qatar and Turkey. But what do you think is then the motivation, or then the concerns that Israel has with Turkey specifically?
So specifically Turkey, I have to say that it was a very key player in reaching this agreement only after Donald Trump pressured Erdogan and pressured Turkey into pressuring Hamas. And that's what led to the successful resolution of an agreement of Hamas to the deal. They had no choice. Their main supporters in the region, Turkey and Qatar, were pressuring them, and they understood that Trump was firm on this and Trump wanted a deal. So they knew that they also had to intervene. That being said, the only reason why Turkey had leverage on Hamas is because they host their leaders, because they are strong supporters of Hamas, one of the main supporters of Hamas in the region, yet alone the world. And that's one of the main concerns that Israel has with Turkey. One of the main lessons we learned on October 7th is that when an enemy that is sworn to your destruction has weapons and they speak openly about your destruction, that you must take this threat seriously. And Erdogan has constantly been speaking out against the state of Israel. In recent sermons, he's even called for the destruction of the state of Israel. So I think that Israel retaining the choice over which regional countries are to enter Gaza and bring troops on the ground is the most basic level of security responsibility that Israel must have. And Turkey is a large threat to Israel, and we do not want to have Turkey on our borders in Gaza and bringing weapons into Gaza and just keeping Hamas in power as
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that,